Welcome to our Alumni Nutrition Talks series, a celebration of 40 years of training nutritional therapists. I'm Heather Rosa, the Dean, and I hope you enjoy this presentation.
Hi, my name's Nicky Clark. In this short nutrition talk of 30 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about whether there's a right diet for Down syndrome. I'm a nutritional therapist working in Sydney, Australia. I studied at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition in London. I now specialise in nutrition for people over the age of 40, but I have a special niche interest in nutrition for Down syndrome. And that's because my youngest son, Michael, who's 4 years old, has Down syndrome. I think specialising in over 40s and Down syndrome actually dovetail quite nicely because in some respects, Down syndrome is an accelerated model of ageing. And I'll explain that a bit more as I go on in this talk. But I think some of the conditions that affect Down syndrome are highly relevant to people over 40. Now, like all parents, we want the best for our children. And this is probably even more so in the case of children with in people with Down syndrome, because we just want the best for them. So when we found out that our son Michael had Down syndrome, the first thing I did, being a nutritionist, was to hop onto Google and search nutrition or diet and Down syndrome. I hoped I'd get a quick and easy answer, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. What I found was that there was lots and lots of information about diet and ideas for diet, but there wasn't anything concrete, and there certainly wasn't anything that I was willing to follow because I was convinced it was the right thing to do. I found a lot about gluten-free diets, so celiac disease, where if someone has celiac disease, they have to have a gluten-free diet. And celiac disease is certainly more prevalent in people with Down syndrome. However, it doesn't mean a gluten-free diet is essential for people with Down syndrome. But Dr. Google was telling me gluten-free is something I should consider, but I wasn't convinced. There was also lots of stuff about dairy-free diets. A lot of families were told their stories of how their person with Down syndrome had quit dairy and that their symptoms, usually digestive symptoms, had resolved. But again, there wasn't really concrete evidence, so it wasn't something I was keen to follow. I also came across a lot of supplements targeted to people with Down syndrome. And these supplements seem to have really high doses of specific vitamins and minerals that people were saying were really important for people with Down syndrome. I could sort of see where they were coming from, but again, I just couldn't find the evidence. So in the end, I just decided that Michael should have a normal, ordinary diet like the diet I was giving for the other children, which in summary was protein with each meal and some fruits and vegetables. Not too much bread, but just a good, healthy diet. In amongst my searching, I did find a couple of things were interesting. I found that people with Down syndrome seem to need fewer calories than other people. That was interesting. It seemed to have some reasonable evidence. And I also found out something about people with Down syndrome maybe needing a bit more zinc than other people. And I'll come on to that again towards the end of this talk. But in summary, I really didn't find a lot of answers. So at 1 year old, Michael just started eating a healthy diet, just like the rest of our family. Now, when I eventually got my head around his Down syndrome diagnosis and figured out the world around me, I spent a bit more time and actually did some proper research into whether there was a right diet for Down syndrome. And this was kind of a fascinating experience. So what I did was I went to a database called PubMed, which anyone can head to. It's on the internet. And this sort of houses a summary of every piece of research that exists, let's give or take, all the research in the world. It houses it, and you can search through it. All up, it has around 36 million research papers, and it's all the papers from the top medical journals around the world. And what happens in this database is that each paper is tagged with the name of things that it relates to. So if it's a research on people with Down syndrome, then it will be tagged with Down syndrome. If it's research on food, diet and nutrition, it'll be tagged food, diet and nutrition. So what I did was I did a search for Down syndrome and food, diet and nutrition. Now, when I put the Down syndrome filter on, it came back with 27,000 papers. Now, at first glance, you sort of think, wow, 27,000 papers, that's fantastic. But then I did another search on cystic fibrosis. Now, Down syndrome is the most common genetic disorder in the world. Cystic fibrosis is the second most common genetic disorder. What I found was that cystic fibrosis actually has 42,000 papers. So what this tells us is that there isn't much research on Down syndrome compared to other conditions. I don't know why this is, but it is a fact. Now, when I looked at these 27,000 papers and I put in the filter with the tag food, diet, and nutrition, I then came up with 372 papers. So this meant there are 372 research papers in the world that look at people with Down syndrome and food, diet, and nutrition. And again, you think, wow, 372 papers, that's fantastic. But what I found searching through them is that they weren't very high quality. A lot of them were reviews of other articles or case studies where they looked at one person and a story or what happened to one person. And a lot of them were about exercise. There were quite a few about how to prevent getting pregnant with Down syndrome. And yeah, on the whole, they weren't quality. They were sort of studies that show associations. They showed that of the people that ate apples, most of them seemed to get grey hair. They weren't studies that said, we're going to give apples to a group of people and see how many people develop grey hair. So they weren't showing causation of the apples to the hair. They were just showing that apples seem to have some sort of relationship with grey hair. Association studies are useful and interesting, but they're not as helpful as studies that show causation, that show that eating an apple causes you to get grey hair. And they're the ones we're really interested in. So when we look at these 372 papers and look for, well, which ones are these quality ones that show causation, that show that the food can cause something, turns out there are only 13 papers. And these 13 papers are not great. Why is that? Well, it transpires that none of the 13 papers actually study food. They all study supplements or exercise. The other thing is they were all on children or infants with Down syndrome. Very few were on adults. And the third thing is that they were really small studies. So the largest of these 13 studies was one with 156 people. But this study only had, it was studying infants. So infants, babies with Down syndrome, who were less than 7 months of age. So that's a good study, but does a 7-month-old really reflect an adult with Down syndrome? Perhaps not, because there are many things going on in the body of a less than 1 year old. The next largest study after that one had 93, and again, it was children, so not adults, children. So these 13 quality studies that might have proved something, they were supplements, not food, mostly children and infants, and really small in size. And because of this, because they were small in size, they were what you call statistically underpowered. They were so small that they weren't able to prove that the apple caused the grey hair, because you need it to happen to larger numbers of people to be able to prove that the apple causes the grey hair. So when I actually dug a bit deeper into these 13 studies, what I found was that 7 of the 13 quality studies studied something called antioxidants. Now, I'll come on to the definition of that in a little bit. But the 7 most recent studies, so the studies range from the early 1980s through to 2023, but the 7 most recent ones, which have been done since the year 2000, they all looked at things called antioxidants. And these are things like green tea, or the extract from green tea, because it was in a supplement form, but also vitamins and minerals that are specific to antioxidants. I'll explain that a bit more later as well. And they also looked at exercise, which is a potent antioxidant. So the question to my mind was, why are there studies on these things? Why are pharmaceutical companies willing to invest lots and lots of money to run these quality studies to see what supplements, what vitamins and minerals and food extracts are able to, or why would they study these things in people with Down syndrome? And the reason is because there's something specific about people with Down syndrome that make antioxidants hugely valuable. First of all, what are antioxidants? Antioxidants, to understand antioxidants, you need to understand something called oxidative stress. So oxidative stress it's a natural part of aging. It's what happens to cells just as part of living. They get exposed to oxygen, so oxidative, oxygen. The oxygen, it's like rusting. The cell gets older, it ages. So a really good example is when you cut up an apple, it's exposed to the oxygen in the air and the apple starts to go brown. Or same thing, you cut an avocado, exposed to the air, it starts to go brown. Antioxidants are things that combat or counter that oxidative stress. So a really good example is maybe you squeeze lemon on an avocado before you put it in the fridge. You've only cut half of it. You do that because you squeeze the antioxidants out of the lemon and onto the avocado to try to slow down that aging process. You might have also seen antioxidants listed on food ingredients. That's because antioxidants help to preserve products. They stop that oxidation, the oxygen on the food, and they slow down the aging process. Now, why are antioxidants so relevant to people for Down syndrome? People with Down syndrome have a special enzyme that sits on the 21st chromosome, and this chromosome increases the rate of oxidative stress. Okay, it's called the SOD1 enzyme that sits on the 21st chromosome, and because there's 3 copies of it, it's overexpressed. So people with Down syndrome have greater oxidative stress than other people. And that's why the pharmaceutical companies wanted to study antioxidants, because they wanted to see if supplements of antioxidants would help to counter that oxidative stress and improve health outcomes for people with Down syndrome. What are antioxidants? So practically, antioxidants, just think brightly coloured fruits and vegetables. So the classic one we see in advertising is blueberries. All the berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, they're rich and full of colour. And so they contain antioxidants naturally, but there's also another sort of antioxidants, and these are antioxidants that our body creates naturally. We have these internal systems inside our body that make antioxidants to help us fight off just the daily living, this oxidative stress of daily living. So going back, the food sources of antioxidants, why do they work? What exactly is going on? Well, a plant is actually brightly coloured as it's a sort of defence mechanism. So when the insect comes along and eats the plant, it sort of gets slightly poisoned by the, let's say, blueberry. But in humans, when we eat it, it's a slight, let's say, poisoning. It's a slight poisoning, but it makes us stronger. And it's like exercise, or this concept called hormesis. It's this idea that we do a bit of exercise and it hurts and the muscle breaks down, but when it comes back, it grows back stronger. So the same idea, when we eat, let's say, a blueberry, we get a little bit of this plant toxin, but it makes us stronger. We build up this antioxidant capacity. So that's where it comes from. So what does this tell us? We now know that pharmaceutical companies have spent lots of money on these studies on antioxidants, and we know that people with Down syndrome have a higher level of oxidative stress. So it seems like a really good diet tip for people with Down syndrome is to eat more antioxidants, so let's say blueberries, and eat more of the foods or the vitamins and minerals that support our body or support their body to make these antioxidants themselves. So first of all, antioxidants in food. What are we talking about? The first one is brightly coloured fruits and vegetables. So this could be anything. It could be, and I'm looking at a picture here of fruits and vegetables so I don't suddenly forget them all, but we've got purple cabbage, we've got pumpkin, oranges, pawpaw, tomato, bananas, green apples, zucchini, kiwi fruit. There's lots and lots of different colours, and getting a range and a mixture of these different colours, that hormesis concept, the concept of getting a little bit of toxin from each of these different vegetables, It's really, really powerful in helping the body to be stronger. And then don't just think about fresh fruits and vegetables. What about dried fruits and vegetables or herbs and spices? These can be a great way to get lots of antioxidants. And when it comes to herbs and spices, the sky is the limit. There are literally thousands of them. The one that we see lots and lots of research on is turmeric, which has the active ingredient curcumin, which is a really, really powerful antioxidant. So curries with turmeric or anything you can add turmeric to is wonderful. It's got that bright yellow colour, and you'll often see it in food ingredients because it's a food preservative. Just a little tip when you're having the turmeric, always have it with a little bit of freshly ground black pepper, and always make sure you have it with a little bit of fat, so some butter or some coconut oil, because that helps you to absorb the good stuff from the turmeric, this stuff called curcumin. So brightly coloured fruits and vegetables, some say 30 different ones each week is the magic number. So get a chart on your fridge and start ticking off different fruits and vegetables each week. And don't forget herbs and spices. Lots and lots, different types, different colours. Go for your life. So that's our way of eating antioxidants. But what about these antioxidants that our body makes? What can we do for them? Well, there are lots and lots of specific vitamins and minerals. And these are actually the vitamins and minerals that I saw in all these supplements that were targeted at Down syndrome children or Down syndrome people when I first looked at them when Michael was little. So these are vitamins and minerals like zinc, selenium, iron, zinc, selenium, and iron being the main ones. These specific minerals help our body to make antioxidants. So it's almost like to make fruit and vegetables in our body. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about zinc and a bit about selenium because I think they're slightly tricky minerals to get in our diet unless we're really, really conscious of it. So first of all, zinc. So if you remember at the start of the talk, I said I found out something about people with Down syndrome may have slightly lower levels of zinc than other people. Well, that makes zinc a really sort of almost extra important mineral for people to Down syndrome to eat in their diet because they have lower levels to start with. Zinc, the foods that are typically touted as being high in zinc are things like oysters, chicken breasts, steak, pumpkin seeds, and chickpeas. Now, what I would say is that oysters are the king when it comes to zinc. So if you wanted to achieve your recommended daily allowance of zinc each day, you would have to have 2 oysters. No, it's not too much. It's doable. But if you wanted to do it through other foods, I'm just going to read here how many you'd have to have. You would have to have 6 chicken breasts. It's a lot. You'd have to have 2 large red steaks, rump steaks. You'd have to have 16 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds or 5 cups of chickpeas. So I think if I was choosing my way of getting zinc, I would be having 2 little oysters. Otherwise, I'd be popping. So zinc, really, really important, and the best way to do it is with zinc. Other good ones are mussels. And look, all animal foods have some amount of zinc, but oysters are king. So think about ways you can get them into your person with Down syndrome's diet. There are lots of recipes on the internet for sort of crumbing and frying them like nuggets, sort of oyster nuggets, and you can get tinned oysters that are much, much cheaper than, say, fresh oysters. The other mineral that is really important to help, remember this internal system that makes antioxidants, is selenium. Now, selenium's a little bit easier to get. So 1 serve, to get your recommended dose each day, you'd need 1 Brazil nut, but you've got to be careful because sometimes they can have lots of selenium, like lots and lots and lots, or sometimes they can have next to nothing. So it's really variable depending on where the Brazil nut was grown. But one Brazil nut might cover you. You could have 4 pieces of bread, but you just have to remember that bread, again, it depends where the wheat grain was grown and therefore whether it's got enough. You could have 3 oysters. Again, oysters, wonderful. You You could have 100 grams of tuna, so that's just a small fillet of tuna. You could have 3 eggs, or you could have 1 chicken liver. So it's a little bit more attainable to get your requirement of selenium, but you do have to be slightly aware of it. So by eating a little bit more zinc, oysters, or selenium, Brazil nuts, you can increase zinc and selenium. And in doing this, you help your body to make antioxidants that counter the oxidative stress that we know is increased in people with Down syndrome. Really, really important minerals that are kind of tricky to get unless you're consciously eating them. And just one other thing to mention before I move on is that zinc and selenium are 2 minerals that are really, really important for the thyroid gland. And we know the thyroid gland is a bit tricky in people with Down syndrome. So again, this is evidence that we have to be conscious of these minerals for people with Down syndrome. That's essentially the end of my talk. What I said, there's not much research on people with Down syndrome and food, diet, and nutrition for them. But if we sort of dig through the research a little bit more, what we find out is that antioxidants seem to be pretty important for people with Down syndrome. And the reason for this is because they have a greater rate of oxidative stress because they've got this special enzyme that sits on the 21st chromosome that is overexpressed, that works harder. So their oxidative stress is higher than we want it to be. Through diet and nutrition, we can increase antioxidants to help fight this oxidative stress, to fight this process of aging. And we can do that in 2 ways. We can eat more antioxidants with, I use the blueberry example again, but with blueberries or brightly coloured fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices. Don't forget turmeric, it's a great one. We can eat more antioxidants, or we can eat more minerals that will help our body to make those antioxidants. And those minerals that I talked about were zinc, oysters, and selenium, Brazil nuts, but you can't rely on them. If you do that, you will increase the body's antioxidant capacity or the ability of antioxidants to counter oxidative stress. And in doing that, we are definitely helping the health of people with Down syndrome. Just to finish off with a few practical ideas and ways of getting a few more antioxidants into our people with Down syndrome. My favourite, admittedly for Michael, who's only 4, is egg pancakes for breakfast. I love these because I can mix lots of vegetables and fruits into a pancake that he loves to eat. We put some peanut butter on top, yogurt on the side, and he's really happy. So what do? Crack a couple of eggs into a bowl and then some oats, and then often I'll pop in the blender some cauliflower, some bits of fruit, maybe some spinach, and then I mix it all together in with the eggs and some oats until it gets nice and thick in a way that's going to form a little pancake on the fry pan. So just mix it with a fork, and then I put scoops onto a fry pan, a little bit of olive oil, and let it cook, and then flip them after about 5 minutes and cook the other side. And in that way, I feel that Michael's getting lots and lots of antioxidants. We often add herbs and spices, and my favourite ones for the breakfast pancakes are cinnamon, nutmeg, and you guessed it, turmeric. So because the turmeric's there, I put a crack of black pepper and fry them in the olive oil to make sure that turmeric's getting into his body as well. That's my favourite. There are some other ideas. So if your person with Down syndrome doesn't like eating crunchy nuts, they don't like the texture, you can always blend the Brazil nuts and turn them into a sort of peanut butter. Mix the peanuts and the Brazil nuts together and turn them into a nut butter that tastes like peanut butter but still has some selenium in there with the Brazil nuts. Other ideas, like I mentioned earlier, oyster nuggets. So putting a bit of batter on the oysters and then frying them. So to batter them, you just put the oyster into a little bit of flour, then a little bit of egg, and then some crumbing, and fry them both sides. Loads of recipes on the internet on this sort of thing. Other things are chicken liver, which is absolute nutrition gold dust. Not very popular, but I always finely chop up some chicken liver, and anything we cook with minced meat, I add some chicken liver just to boost the nutrient content. And that's got lots of iron, zinc, selenium, particularly the iron, which again is something that can be low in people with Down syndrome. My final words, because Michael's young, my advice tends to be around getting young kids to eat foods. Just make it fun and don't give up on foods. So put the fruit on a skewer, anything on a skewer Michael seems to eat, or put things, Michael loves sushi, so we put anything inside of a sushi roll and he eats it. Just the other day, I left out some salmon mixed with mayonnaise. The boy who never ate salmon, I came into the kitchen and there he was eating the salmon with the mayonnaise because he was hungry. I never would have expected that. So don't give up, make it fun. And most importantly, just think just little changes every day to boost the antioxidants, to combat that oxidative stress, to help our people with Down syndrome. I really, really hope you found this helpful. Please do get in touch. I really strongly believe that nutrition is extraordinarily powerful for people with Down syndrome. Always happy to help. Thanks a lot.
If you enjoyed this presentation, then click on the link in the description to subscribe to our Nutrition Talks email list. And don't forget to click the like button and subscribe.